The sun was warm above the alien colony of Sirava 9. Blue leaves rustled in the wind, and tall crystal trees shimmered under the light. The human engineer, Mark Jensen, walked through the colony streets with a smile. He was there on a mission: help fix broken machines and share technology with their alien allies. Sirava 9 was peaceful, home to a kind and intelligent alien species called the Talari. They were small, elegant, and had glowing lines on their skin that shimmered with emotions. Mark liked them, especially the children, who were curious about everything. Every time he passed through the village, they would follow him, asking questions and laughing. One afternoon, while carrying a broken water unit, Mark heard a cry nearby. He turned a corner and saw a small crowd of alien children. In the middle, a tiny Talari girl had fallen to the ground, her small arms covering her head. 3 older alien boys stood around her, teasing her because her glow was too dim. "Hey!" Mark called out, his voice calm but firm. The boys froze, then quickly ran off. Mark knelt beside the girl, who looked up at him with wide violet eyes full of tears. Her skin glowed faintly silver, which meant she was scared. "What's your name?" Mark asked gently. She sniffed and wiped her face, then whispered, "Lyra." Mark smiled. "Lyra, huh? That's a beautiful name." He offered her his hand, and she slowly stood up. The other children had returned and now stood around quietly to cheer her up. Mark said playfully, "You know what, Lyra? When you grow up, I'll marry you." The children gasped, then laughed. Lyra's eyes widened, her cheeks glowing pink with surprise. "Really?" she asked in a small voice. Mark chuckled. "Sure, but only if you promise to grow tall and strong first." She smiled shyly and nodded. Everyone laughed, even the shy Lyra, whose glow now sparkled brightly. It was just a joke, a silly promise to make her smile. But in Lyra's heart, something changed. That moment, his kindness, his words stayed deep inside her. She watched him from a distance for weeks after that, her glow always bright when he walked by. Mark continued his work in the colony, repairing machines and teaching the Talari engineers. He didn't know that Lyra was always watching, always listening. Sometimes she'd leave small gifts for him: a glowing rock, a hand-drawn picture, a sweet fruit. He smiled every time, thinking. It was one of the children. After a year, Mark's mission ended. It was time to return to Earth. The Talari threw him a farewell ceremony with music, food, and dancing. As he stood near the transport ship, he noticed Lyra standing alone under a glowing tree. She held a small box in her hands and walked slowly to him. "I made this," she said, handing it over. Inside was a tiny metal ring, shaped like a human one, with tiny alien symbols carved into it. "It's a promise," she whispered, her voice barely heard. Mark felt a little lump in his throat but kept his smile. "Thank you, Lyra. I'll keep it," he said. She looked up at him, her eyes serious. "You said you would marry me when I grow up," she whispered again. Mark laughed softly, ruffling her soft white hair. "I did say that," he replied, "but only if you become tall and strong, remember?" "I will," she promised. "I will train and grow, and I will find you." Before he could answer, she ran off, her glow like a firefly trail in the night. Mark boarded his ship and looked down at the small ring in his hand. He smiled, shaking his head. It was just a joke, he said to himself. She'd forget. But deep inside, something told him maybe she wouldn't. Years passed. Mark forgot about the colony, about the small glowing girl. He moved on, working in space stations, building machines, helping Earth grow. He never wore the ring, but he kept it in a box, hidden in a drawer. One night, long after he had left the stars behind, a strange signal reached Earth. A small alien ship was heading toward the planet. No weapons, no threats, only one passenger. When the scan showed a Talari signature, someone whispered, "Who is she coming for?" She had only one word in her message, a name, Mark. Earth's orbital sensors picked up the signal before anyone saw the ship. It was silent, smooth, and glowing with alien tech like something out of a dream. The ship didn't match any known Telari military craft. No weapons were active, no distress call sent, just one peaceful signal. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere without resistance. Air patrols tracked it as it floated gently down, landing near a United Earth Alliance base. No guards were attacked, no systems hacked, no demands made. The ship's door opened slowly, and from the shadows, a single figure stepped out. She was tall, graceful, and wore a shimmering cloak made of crystal fabric. Her silver skin glowed with soft blue lines that moved like flowing rivers. Long white hair fell over her shoulders, and her violet eyes held a deep, calm fire. She wasn't just an alien, she was royalty. Earth soldiers stood frozen, unsure what to do. Before anyone could stop her, she walked forward and spoke clearly. In perfect human English, "I am Lyra of the Telari House of Stars." She said, "Take me to Mark Jensen." The name hit the officers like a shockwave. Mark, the retired engineer? The one who worked on Sarava 9 2 decades ago? Why would an alien woman from a distant royal family come across the galaxy? For him, before they could answer her, she added, "He made me a promise. I have returned to fulfill it." Back at Earth Command, confusion spread like fire. Top generals argued, politicians demanded answers, and scientists ran DNA checks. Everything matched. She was Telari, but not just any Telari. She was now next in line to rule the Telari star clans and heir to the throne. A meeting was called at the United Earth Embassy under high security. Lyra waited patiently, her eyes watching the stars through the tall windows. She spoke little, only repeating one thing. "I have come for Mark." Meanwhile, Mark sat alone in his quiet apartment in New Berlin. He lived simply now, fixing homebots and helping young engineers learn. He had no idea his name had triggered a galactic event. He had no idea that his past had returned, beautiful, grown, and glowing with purpose. Late in the evening, a loud knock came on his door. 3 government agents stood outside, all serious and silent. One asked, "We need you to come with us." Mark blinked. "Why? What happened?" "We'll explain on the way," the agent said. "But it's urgent, and it's about Sarava 9. The moment Mark heard that name, his heart skipped. Old memories flashed in his mind: blue trees, laughter, and a small glowing girl with a handmade ring. No way. He whispered to himself as he grabbed his jacket and followed the agents. At the embassy, Lyra waited inside a crystal chamber guarded by Earth's elite soldiers. She stood with calm pride, her hands folded, her eyes never blinking. When Mark entered the room, he stopped dead in his tracks. The girl from his past was now a woman, tall, strong, glowing with grace and power. "Lyra," he whispered, not sure if it was real. She turned, her face softening for the first time in hours. "Mark," she said, "you kept your name as I hoped." He smiled awkwardly. You really grew up." She stepped forward. "And you stayed alive. That was my only wish." Mark scratched his head, unsure what to say. "It was a joke, Lyra. A promise I made to cheer you up. But not to me," she said gently. "To me, it was real, and I never forgot." Behind the mirrored glass, Earth leaders watched in silence. Some were worried. What did this mean? Why now? What did she really want? But Lyra's words were calm, honest, and full of emotion. "I have traveled across 27 star systems, refused suitors, avoided war, just to find you." Mark sat down slowly, still trying to believe it. "You're serious about this?" he asked. She nodded. "More than you can imagine. Your promise is the thread that held me together through trials and politics, through danger and doubt." Mark looked at her, at the strange light in her eyes. It wasn't just about love, it was about destiny. He chuckled nervously. "Well, I guess I owe you more than a wedding ring now." She smiled, the first real smile since arriving on Earth. "No," she said. "You only owe me your time, your truth, and your answer." Outside, whispers spread, rumors of a royal alien woman coming for a human man. Some mocked it, others feared it, but a few. A few believed in it. In a galaxy full of war and lies, one old joke had become something sacred, and for the first time, Earth stood on the edge of something greater, not war, not science, but something far more dangerous. A promise remembered. Mark Jensen had always liked simple things, a quiet apartment, hot coffee in the morning, and fixing old machines with his hands. After years in space, he found peace on Earth. Far away from alien stars and broken satellites, he lived alone. No wife, no kids, just memories of missions long gone. Most people never even noticed him. In the city of New Berlin, he was just that tech guy who helped repair cleaning bots and air filters. Sometimes young engineers came to him for advice, and he taught them patiently. But deep inside, something always felt unfinished. One morning, Mark was working on a delivery drone when a message flashed on his screen. "You are required for questioning by United Earth Command. Immediate transport arranged." Before he could even read it again, his doorbell rang. 3 men in gray suits stood outside. "Government type. Mr. Jensen," one said. "Please come with us, it's urgent." Mark blinked. "What's going on?" "We'll explain on the way, sir," the agent replied. "It's about Sarava 9. Mark froze, his hands going cold. That name, that planet, he hadn't heard it in 20 years. His last memory of it was a small glowing girl with a ring in her hand and a serious look in her eyes. No, it couldn't be. Inside the transport, the agent stayed silent. Through the window, Earth's towers passed by, tall and cold like memories. Mark looked down at his own hands, older, now rough, but steady. He thought about the silly promise he had made all those years ago. He had meant nothing by it, had he? Just a kind joke to make a child smile. At the Earth Embassy, everything felt like a dream. Security was tight, armed guards at every door. He was led through glass halls and steel rooms, until they stopped outside a chamber. "Before we take you in," said the agent, "you should know something." Mark waited, heart pounding. "She's not just any Talari citizen," the man continued. "She's a royal heir, and she came only for you." The door opened slowly, and Mark stepped inside. Lyra stood by the window, bathed in starlight. She turned when she sensed him, her long white hair flowing like silk. He barely recognized her. Gone was the shy little girl. Now she was tall, powerful, and radiant. "Mark," she said softly. He took a step closer, eyes searching her face. "Lyra, He paused, unsure of what to say. "It's really you. I told you I'd find you," she replied, her voice like calm music. "I trained, I studied. I refused all other matches." "Because of me?" he asked, still not believing. "Because of a promise," she answered. "Your words gave me hope when I had nothing else." Mark laughed weakly, running a hand through his hair. "You do know I was joking, right?" "I know," she said. "But in my world, words carry power, even jokes." Mark sat down, trying to process everything. "So you came all this way, just to remind me?" She looked at him deeply. "No, I came to ask, do you still mean it?" He stared at her, at the way her eyes glowed with emotion. It wasn't a game, not to her, but to him. It was complicated. He liked his quiet life, his freedom, his peace. He didn't know if he was ready for this. Outside the chamber, officials whispered. Some wanted to use Lyra's presence for politics, to strengthen Earth's alliances. Others feared it. What if this was a trick? A distraction before war? Only a few saw it for what it truly was, a rare, honest bond between two very different souls. That night, Mark returned home, but nothing felt the same. His rooms felt too quiet, his machines too dull. He opened his drawer, pulled out a small wooden box, and opened it. Inside was the ring Lyra had made, still shining with soft light. He sat down, staring at it for a long time. He remembered her tiny hands giving it to him, her voice whispering, "It's a promise." He had laughed then, not realizing he had placed a seed into someone's heart. Now that seed had returned, fully grown and waiting. The next day, Mark walked through the city. People looked at him differently now, some smiling, some curious, some suspicious. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was the human the alien princes came for. He didn't like the attention, but deep down, something else stirred. Was it guilt? Wonder? Or maybe purpose? He didn't know yet, but he knew one thing: his quiet life had been shattered, and in its place stood something far more powerful. A promise made in laughter, now knocking at his door. The next morning, Mark stood outside the embassy's glass building, his heart heavy. He hadn't slept all night. The memory of Lyra's voice, her glowing eyes, and the weight of that tiny promise filled his mind. He never thought a joke from the past could turn into something this serious. Inside, the Earth Council was already waiting. Military officials, diplomats, scientists, they all wanted answers. And in the middle of it all stood Lyra, calm, regal, and unshaken. She wore a ceremonial robe now, with glowing threads that danced. In the light, when Mark entered, Lyra looked at him and nodded. The room went silent. Lyra stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "I will speak now," she said. "And I ask you to listen not as politicians, but as people." Everyone leaned in as she began to tell her story. After Mark left Sarava 9, Lyra had trained to become a diplomat and warrior. Her people were old, proud, and deeply rooted in honor. But behind the shining surface of their civilization, a storm had been growing. A rival bloodline wanted power. They didn't believe in peace with humans. They believed that the Talari should rule the stars alone. And when Lyra was named heir, they tried to stop her. But I survived, Lyra said, her glow steady, because I held on to one thing, one bond, one vow. She turned to Mark. Your words, though spoken in kindness, became my anchor. I knew if I reached you, if we united, I could gain the strength to protect my people and yours. Murmurs spread in the chamber. Was this just romance, or was it strategy? Lyra continued. The Talari see promises as sacred. In my culture, a life promise is stronger than blood. Mark stepped closer, uncertain but moved. You mean, if I accept, you gain your throne? She nodded. Yes, but more than that. A union between us would end the debate. It would prove that the Talari and humans can be one. If I return alone, I will be forced into a political bond, one that may drag our worlds into war. Mark looked at the others in the room, suspicious faces, worried eyes. Then he looked at her, and for the first time, saw the full weight she was carrying. Not just a promise from the past, but the future of two civilizations. I don't know if I'm ready for all this, Mark said softly. I'm just an engineer, not a ruler. Lyra smiled gently. You're not being asked to lead, only to stand beside me. To be my bond not as a tool, but as a partner. A general interrupted. What proof do we have that this bond brings peace? What if this is just manipulation? Lyra turned to him, her glow darkening. If I wanted to manipulate, I would have come with ships. Not alone, not unarmed, not with hope in my heart. Silence followed. Mark felt the tension build inside him like a rising wave. He stepped forward. Again, eyes locked with hers. You waited all these years. For me? I did, she whispered. Not because you're powerful, not because you're famous, but because you were kind when no one else was. Mark took a breath. His whole life had been quiet, slow, safe, and now here stood a woman offering him not just love, but meaning, a place in something far greater than himself. He turned to the council. I don't have all the answers, he said, but I believe her. She didn't come for power, she came because I once gave her a reason to believe, and maybe now, she's giving me a reason to do the same. A low hum filled the room as diplomats exchanged glances. Some nodded slowly, others remained unsure. But no one could deny one thing. This moment was bigger than war, bigger than fear. This was history. After the meeting, Lyra and Mark walked outside under the artificial sky dome. She looked at him and smiled. So? He sighed, chuckled, and shook his head. I still think this is crazy, he said. But maybe it's the kind of crazy I need. She stepped closer. No pressure, she said with a smirk. But if you say yes, we might just save the galaxy, he laughed. A real laugh this time. All right, he replied. Let's see where this promise takes us. Above them, the stars shimmered, and far away, in the Talari system, old enemies watched. They were not happy, because the one thing they feared most was now happening. A bond between human and air, forged in laughter, turning into power and peace. Mark sat in his room staring at the glowing ring on the table, the same ring Lyra had made for him when she was just a child. It had survived time, war, travel across the stars, and now it sat there, waiting. Just like her, he had accepted the proposal, but the weight of that choice had just begun to show. The media had exploded. Alien heir chooses human groom. Peace through love or clever trick? Mark Jensen savior or pawn? Everyone had an opinion. Some cheered, others warned of doom, but Mark couldn't listen to any of it, because the voice he kept hearing was his own, whispering, "You're just a technician. What are you doing in a royal promise?" Outside, guards stood watch, drones hovered above, and diplomats came and went. But inside Mark's head, it was just confusion. He hadn't seen this coming. He hadn't planned any of it. He remembered the girl who once handed him a ring. But now she was a woman who carried the future of her people on her shoulders. A soft knock came. Lyra entered quietly. Her usual glow dimmed. She wore no crown, no robe, just a simple suit and bare feet. For the first time, she didn't look like an alien princess. She looked like someone searching for comfort. "You're quiet," she said, sitting beside him. Mark glanced at her. "I'm thinking. About us?" "About everything," he replied. "And yes, about us." Lyra looked down at her hands, then slowly spoke. "I never meant to put this weight on you, but I had no other choice." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You could have just moved on. Found someone on your planet, someone who understood your world better." She looked up, eyes steady. "I didn't want someone who understood my world. I wanted someone who helped me escape it. You were the only light when I was surrounded by expectations and cruelty. When others told me I wasn't strong enough, you told me to grow stronger. When I had nothing, you gave me a promise, even if you didn't mean it." Mark sighed. "That's the thing. I didn't mean it, not in the way you think. I just wanted to make a sad little girl smile. And you did," she whispered. "But that smile gave me the strength to become who I am now." He stared at her, the emotion in her voice real and raw. No guards, no politics, just truth. "I'm scared, Lyra," he admitted. "Scared of being used, scared of failing. What if I can't live up to what your people expect?" She touched his hand gently. "Then we fail together," she said. "But we try. You're not alone, Mark. I'm not asking you to become something you're not. I just want the man who once gave me hope. That's all I've ever wanted." Silence filled the room, warm and heavy. Mark felt the pressure shift, not vanish but soften. She wasn't asking him to be a king, a warrior, or a symbol. She was asking him to be present. But outside, forces were already moving. One Telari council member, Lord Veruin, had sent messages to Earth leaders. He believed the bond was fake, a distraction. He warned that if the proposal went forward, his faction would break the peace treaty. Earth could be pulled into Telari. Civil war. Meanwhile, human officials debated. Should they allow this union? Was it safe? Or should they remove Mark from the situation for diplomatic stability? Lyra knew the danger, but she also knew if she showed fear, she would lose everything. So she returned to her ship and activated an ancient tradition, a public bonding ritual where her people could see her choice live through hololinks. Mark was told he had 3 options: accept the ritual, refuse and return to Earth life, or delay and let both governments decide his fate. That night, he stood by the window watching stars shimmer across the sky. His heart battled with doubt and desire. He wasn't a warrior, he wasn't a hero, but maybe, just maybe, he was the right kind of human for her. He remembered her promise. "I will find you," and he whispered back. "You did." The next morning, he walked into the Talari ship dressed in ceremonial robes. The hall was filled with diplomats, warriors, and glowing symbols of the stars. Lyra stood at the end of the aisle, wearing the same ring he had kept. All these years, everyone watched. Enemies waited. All eyes held their breath. And as Mark took her hand, he didn't think of war or politics. He thought of a tiny girl who once glowed softly under blue trees, and the promise made in laughter, now standing in the light of two worlds. Between heart and honor, he chose both. The bonding ceremony had ended. The stars above Talari space shimmered brighter than ever. The image of a human and an alien heir joining hands had spread across the galaxy. Millions watched, some with wonder, others with rage. Mark and Lyra stood together, their hands still touching, around them. Talari council members bowed, and human envoys offered quiet applause. It looked like peace. It felt like unity. But not everyone was celebrating. Far beyond the lights, in the dark corners of the Talari system, others were watching. Enemies who had waited in silence. Enemies who had no interest in peace. Lord Varun sat in a cold chamber, deep within an asteroid fortress. His eyes glowed red with anger. "This union is a joke," he spat. "Our princess binds herself to a human, and we're expected to bow?" Around him, his loyal warriors remained still. They had waited years to reclaim the throne. Now a single Earthborn man had ruined everything. "We must end this, quickly, before the alliance becomes law," Varun growled. One soldier stepped forward. "You want war?" "No," Varun said coldly. "I want the illusion of tragedy. A simple accident. During their journey, something goes wrong. The bond ends. The future resets." The plan was set in motion. A Talari assassin, known only as Shade, was summoned. From the outer moons, half visible, half shadow. She was a master of silent death. Her orders were clear. Eliminate Mark Jensen. Leave no trace. Make it look like an accident. Back aboard the royal vessel, Mark wandered the long glowing halls. He still felt out of place. Strange lights floated past. Alien symbols blinked gently on the walls. But somehow, it had begun to feel like home. Lyra found him near the observation deck. She stood beside him, the stars reflecting in her eyes. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Mark shook his head. "No, I just didn't expect it all to feel so real." She smiled. "It is real." Then she looked down, her expression tightening. "There's something I must tell you." Mark turned to her. "What is it?" "There are still many who want this bond broken. Some may act violently." Mark took a deep breath. "You think they'll come for me?" "I know they will," she said, "and I won't let them." Just then, the lights flickered. A warning flashed across the ship's central console. "Intrusion detected in engine sector," without a word. Lyra pulled a small plasma blade from her robe and tossed Mark a compact shield module. "No more politics," she whispered. "Now we survive." They moved quickly through the corridors. The ship was on lockdown, but the enemy had already entered. Mark stayed close behind her, shield ready, heart pounding. This wasn't theory. This wasn't training. This was real. In the engine room, Shade moved like smoke. Invisible, silent, deadly, she attached an explosive to the core. Time to detonate as the ship passed near Earth orbit. It would look like an accident, a tragedy. The galaxy would mourn and move on. But Lyra was faster than expected. She burst into the room. Blade glowing, Shade turned, surprised for the first time in years. The two clashed. Blue light against shadow, blade against blade. Mark dove for the bomb, trying to disarm it with trembling fingers. Wires, alien circuits, timing codes, it was all unfamiliar. But he trusted one thing, his instincts. The same instincts that had once repaired life support under fire. The same hands that had built peace one machine at a time. "Lyra." He called. 10 seconds. She blocked a strike, kicked Shade back, and threw her blade. It sliced the ceiling, dropping a heavy pipe that crushed the assassin's leg. Shade hissed and vanished into smoke. escaping through a vent Mark found. The last code yanked the core battery. The timer stopped at 3 seconds. Silence fell over the room, heavy and sharp. Lyra dropped to her knees beside him, her breathing heavy, her hands glowing dim. "You saved us," she whispered. He looked at her, sweat dripping from his face. "No, we saved each other." Later, guards searched the ship, but the assassin had vanished. Only the broken device remained evidence that the threat was real. Lyra called an emergency meeting with her council. Mark stood beside her, this time not as an outsider, but as her equal. She faced her people, voice steady. "There are enemies who would rather see us burn than stand together," she said. "But we will not bend, we will not break, because this bond between human and Talari is no longer a dream. It is our future." The room erupted in support. But in the shadows beyond the stars, Lord Varuan clenched his fists. The plan had failed. But the war had just begun, and now, two hearts stood united, not just by a promise, but by battle and blood. The Talari High Council had called for a final vote. The room was vast crystal walls glowing with history from across the galaxy. Clan leaders had gathered to decide the future. Would Lyra be named supreme voice of the Talari star clans or cast aside? The assassination attempt had changed everything. Even the neutral leaders now believed the danger was real, but doubt still lingered, doubt not about Lyra, but about the human standing beside her. Mark stood in the center of the chamber, eyes calm, back straight. He wore no armor, no titles, just his truth. He was not a warrior, not a noble, just a man who had once made a little girl smile, and that smile had changed the stars. Lyra stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "I bring before you not just my bondmate, but my truth," she said. "This man did not chase power. He didn't seek the crown. He simply kept a promise, one that I built my life around." Some counselors whispered, unsure, but others watched in silence, their expressions softening. One elder finally spoke. "If he is your chosen, then let him speak with his own heart." Mark stepped forward slowly, every eye on him. He looked at Lyra first, then at the gathered alien leaders. "I don't know your politics," he began. "I don't know your history, your bloodlines, your rules. But I know what kindness is. I know what loyalty means. And I know that Lyra, when she was just a little girl, believed in me when she had no one else." He paused, then continued. "She asked nothing in return, just hope, and I gave it, not knowing it would matter so much." He took a breath. "If you want to judge me for being human, go ahead. But understand this, our bond is not about race, power, or strategy. It's about a moment when one soul reached out to another, and a promise became real." Silence followed, heavy like a wave. Then one by one, the counselors stood and placed their glowing palms to the air. The signal of approval. The vote had passed. Lyra was now officially the supreme voice of her people, and Mark, the human, was no longer just a joke from the past. He was her partner in peace, across the stars. Messages lit up screens. Human Talari. Alliance sealed. First interspecies royal bond finalized. Promise turns into power. But none of that mattered to Mark, because at that moment, as Lyra turned and smiled at him, he felt something he had never known fully before. He felt home. In the following weeks, Earth and Talari began cultural exchanges. Humans visited crystal cities. Talari students came to Earth universities. Trade bloomed, war faded, and technology jumped forward in leaps. One evening, standing beneath the glowing moons of Sarava 9, Mark and Lyra walked together through the forest where they had first met. Blue trees swayed gently, and glowing insects buzzed softly in the dark. Mark stopped and looked at her. "I never asked," he said. "Why didn't you just let go of the promise after all these years?" Lyra looked at him, her silver glow reflecting the moonlight. "Because I didn't want a world built on fear," she said. "I wanted a world built on something soft, something human. Your joke was small, but it was made with kindness. That kindness saved me." Mark smiled, took her hand. and pulled something from his pocket. It was the old ring she had given him as a child. He had worn it secretly for weeks. Now he placed it gently onto her finger. "This time," he said, "it's my promise to you, not made in laughter, but made in love." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she leaned in. For a moment, there were no governments, no titles, no politics, just two beings who had defied time, fate, and even war, because of a single memory. High above them, the stars watched silently, witnessing a bond no map could chart. No code could explain, and no power could break, because it wasn't forged by force. It wasn't written in law, it was simply spoken, years ago, in a quiet voice filled with warmth. "When you grow up, I'll marry you." A joke, a promise, a prophecy, now fulfilled, and the galaxy would never be the same again.